Got this from the New York Times. Criminal charges possible in shooting on Alec Baldwin set, DA says. An inquiry into how a cinematographer was killed with a gun the actor was rehearsing with, which was not supposed to have live rounds in it, could take weeks. They said the Santa Fe County District Attorney said on Tuesday that she was not ruling out criminal charges in last week's fatal shooting on a film set. Alec Baldwin was rehearsing with a gun that he had been told did not contain live ammo when it went off, killing the film cinematographer. So we know this. Now I've got a few questions. First, let me just read this quote. DA Mary Carmack Altwee says we haven't ruled out anything. Everything at this point, including criminal charges, is on the table. I just want to point out the entire time this story has been in the news cycle, Alec Baldwin has been given every benefit of the doubt, and it's been wrong every time. The first thing they said was it was a blank and it was a misfire. Then we learned from the union it wasn't a blank, but it was a misfire. Now we're learning Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger. It wasn't a misfire.
Negligent discharge.
I think that's even interesting too. Was it negligent discharge or was it Alec Baldwin intentionally discharging the weapon? That's why this starts to get into criminal territory.
And there's also a lot of people complaining about the production cutting corners, a lot of staff saying that they were terrified because the guns were going off beforehand incorrectly. And hearing, misfire by the mainstream media, it doesn't tell the story here at all. So we're seeing a concerted effort to try to murky the waters already. So at least there should be an investigation here to find out what really happened.
Misfire specifically means the gun didn't go off. So that's incredible negligence by the media saying that.
Yeah, they were obsessing about it.
It's fully semi-automatic.
Yeah.
They don't know what we're talking about.
Whether he intended to or not, it was a negligent discharge. And I think there were three people that I can tell are involved. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed is the armorer who handed the weapon to Dave Halls, who was the assistant director, who handed the gun to Alec and told him it was cold.
We don't know
Alec,
that.
Well, this is according to this story from LATimes.com.
What I'm saying, I hear you.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we've been told every step of the way one thing and then only to find out later that wasn't true.
And
one of the details that I read was that there were 3 different guns and someone walked over and grabbed one. So I kind of feel like him claiming he told Alec it was cold is just them covering, their asses.
I think this is from the director's testimony. They got a hold of the director and they're like, what happened? He was like, dude, it's gruesome. You really want to hear about what happened? The girl was paralyzed by the bullet first, couldn't feel her legs, and then she died. It's absolutely horrible. Negligent. This is...
for someone who lectures about how dangerous firearms are, he sure didn't take this matter seriously.
So I kind of feel like manslaughter is possible, but when I was bringing this up earlier, Charles, you were just like, never going to happen.
No, the calculus is ultimately political. It's like, does the Santa Fe prosecutor, what are her aspirations, and does she want a media trial? Does she have to navigate any media trial? I suspect the answer is no. I don't think the trial happened that he would be convicted. I don't think the jury's going to convict. I think he's too sympathetic. And B, I don't think there's any interest in actually going out and prosecuting the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, just from a political perspective. I don't know what happened. I don't think you know what happened. I think we can guess, but I think it is unlikely. Nobody wants that heat. Nobody wants the attention of a celebrity murder case.
I think
less people hate him, and people like Alec Baldwin. He's kind of a jerk. People like Alec Baldwin.
Not half the country does, and that's the big issue when it comes to issues like Kyle Rittenhouse, Derek Chauvin. We know Antifa will go around and smash up windows and burn down buildings, and the right won't do anything like that. So there's already an obvious, it flows in one direction. The prosecutor's going to look at this and be like, okay, let's say we do go after Alec Baldwin. We're going to get a bunch of crazed, lefty types screaming in our faces, yelling at us, and let's say we don't prosecute him. Nothing happens.
Yep.
Okay, so which do we choose?
I think Lady Justice is blind, and if an actor negligently discharges a weapon that he should have inspected and kills someone, that a manslaughter charge is warranted.
Well, let me read this from Legal Insurrection. This is where it gets interesting because the DA is saying they could have criminal charges. And Andrew Bronco, we've had on the show before.
Yes.
He's got excellent analysis on the Rittenhouse case, which and we'll talk about that case in a second. They say Alec Baldwin's situation beginning to look a lot like manslaughter. The more we learn about the facts of the case within the context of New Mexico criminal law, the more this shooting looks increasingly like a crime, specifically felony involuntary manslaughter. He goes on to say the relevant facts assumed to be established. 1, that it was Alec Baldwin who was manipulating the gun that fired the projectile that killed Miss Hutchins.
Yeah.
2, that the gun discharged because the trigger was depressed by Baldwin and not because of some defect in the weapon. 3, that the muzzle of the weapon was directed towards Miss Hutchins by Baldwin when it was fired, e.g., she was not killed by an unpredictable ricochet. 4, the gun contained a live round, the bullet of which struck and killed Miss Hutchins. 5, that Baldwin had the opportunity to inspect the weapon for live ammo before he directed it at Miss Hutchins and pressed the trigger, killing her. And lastly, there was no justification for the shooting of Miss Hutchins. Now, interestingly, some of these recently are new developments, such as that he pulled the trigger, that he pointed it at the woman, and then he pulled the trigger. Initially, people were saying misfire as if to claim that, like, I heard one report that they were like, oh, someone pulled the hammer back and handed it to him, and then when he was holding it, it just went off. Like as if that's what misfire meant. No, misfire means it didn't shoot. This was negligent discharge. The other relevant factors, which I've stated, but for the context right now, I'll say again. There's a witness who, not a witness, but I guess you could say a character witness, someone who's worked with Baldwin, who says that they worked with him in the past and he was always very careful. That was back in, I think, the 80s or something. That means Alec Baldwin has decades of firearms training on set. He's a producer of the film. There were already negligent discharges on the set that crew had complained about, so you can't say he didn't know. Then he was handed a weapon, aimed at the woman, and pulled the trigger. That sounds like...
Yeah, I mean, from
intentional.
a legal perspective, you know, I'm a strong parent of legality, but from a firearm safety perspective, the number one rule of even a prop gun is that you don't point it at somebody unless you're willing to pull the trigger. And as you were saying, for somebody who's so aware of how dangerous firearms can be, it's like there was no reason to put a prop gun at somebody who's you're not actively using it.
I don't know if he was aware. If he was aware, I think this would have been prevented. He sure preaches a lot of this political ideology against people who want to have the right to defend themselves.
The first rule of firearm handling, you know, every time one of my former colleagues, a guy named Stephen Katowski, who now runs a gun news site called The Reload, but he's one of the best firearm reporters in America right now. And Stephen took a bunch of us shooting at the NRA range, which is a good time. And the first thing that they tell you, everybody in that room is viscerally aware of the importance of trigger discipline, of being aware when your safety's on, when your safety's off, of where you're pointing your gun. Only ever pointing the gun down range. If it's loaded, only ever pointed down. Like these are. You know, if you genuinely believe it's a deadly weapon, or if you believe it's a facsimile of a deadly weapon, you have to treat it as such because it'll always be loaded.
Let's think about the absurdity of the argument I keep hearing from people defending Alec Baldwin. Just it's the most insane thing ever. I'm getting all these tweets where they're like, clearly Tim has never been on set before, and they're saying things like, "Tell me you've never been on a movie set," without actually telling me you've been on a movie set. I just want you to imagine that you're on a movie set, and I've been on sets before. I've been on sets of TV shows and films, and I just want you to imagine you're working, you're a PA or whatever. You got, look at the Warner Brothers water tower, and then all of a sudden you see Alec Baldwin pull out a gun and point it at you, and you're gonna be like, "This is totally fine. It's Hollywood. People point guns at everybody all the time. There's nothing weird about this at all." No, if that actually happened, people would be screaming and running. Yet for some reason here, Alec Baldwin drew a gun, pointed it, shot, killed somebody. And they're acting like it's normal.
It's not normal.
No.
What it looks like, they were in the middle of a shot. The crazy word, shot. They're in the middle of this take, and they got bad light, so they had to move the camera. And it's like momentary lapse of thought. I think that all three of these people, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, Dave Halls, and Alec Baldwin, are all culpable for this killing.
Alex.
All three of them deserve to be investigated and charged for this.
The woman who was the armorer, she made a mistake, but she didn't point a weapon at somebody.
She handed someone a loaded gun.
So what?
So that's illegal.
She didn't. Well, she handed. Actually, I don't think she even handed the weapon to somebody. It was the assistant director who picked the gun up and handed it to Baldwin.
Okay.
So she's got guns, and someone comes up and grabs one. I don't think necessarily that's criminal. If it's her job to have the weapons on set.
According to the story, they went to lunch and then they came back and they just gave. So someone, while they were away at lunch, the guns were unattended.
Yep.
That's the armorer's fault.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's are you implying that while they're away, someone snuck in and put a live bullet in the gun?
It's possible, yeah. That's possible.
But in that case, the person who put the bullet in there is at fault.
Definitely.
Well, there's reports that some of the staff were using the gun for
target
just
practice,
target practice
Yeah.
even before that with live ammunition. So, I mean, this goes along with the kind of narrative that we've been hearing, that they've been cutting corners, that they were just trying to make sure that they produced this movie as cheap as possible. The staff were protesting. They were mad. They walked off set for safety concerns before this incident. They walked off set because of conditions that they said weren't right on this movie set. But Alec Baldwin and the production staff still continued. And, I mean, this is where we are right now.
We have a story from Fox News to say Mark, how do you pronounce that? Garagos? Famed lawyer says he'd be shocked if involuntary manslaughter not brought in Baldwin rust shooting. I got to be honest. I agree with you. I'd be shocked if there are charges brought. This is a guy who's an establishment activist, you know.
She was really well loved, though.
And he has a lot of money. In the legal system here in the United
matters.
States, it doesn't matter if you're right and wrong. It matters how much money you have. It matters what kind of lawyers you could hire. And he's going to hire, if there is charges, he's going to hire the best lawyers that they are that will give him the best justice that he could afford. And he could afford a lot of it. So let's just be honest how the legal system works here, because a lot of times it doesn't matter what happened. A lot of times it matters who you got on your side and how much money you got.
So you think he'll throw the blame on Dave Halls, who handed him the gun and said it was unloaded?
I think there's many avenues here. I don't know. But there's many different avenues that I see them running with potentially here.
I think there's no one's gonna get in trouble for anything. They're gonna say it was an accident. Oh, we're so sorry. He's gonna make a donation. It'll all just go away.
I'm not obsessed with punishment. I definitely think that throwing someone in jail isn't necessarily the best way to make sure they don't commit a crime again. But I definitely think this looks like a manslaughter.
I agree. Like, what would jailing Alec Baldwin do to prevent him from doing this again? Yeah. I kind of feel like he won't do this again, you know? But people want some kind of emotional satisfaction.
Well, it's not just emotional satisfaction, right? The justice system serves a variety of functions, but retribution is not just about emotional satisfaction with the public. It's about the fact that there was a real harm done, regardless of intent, and there has to be some response to that. The absence of the response is harmful. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out over here what the deal is with the district attorney, who's going to be. District attorney's offices are highly politicized today in 2021, where they were 5-10 years ago. She seems like a career professional, but she has an enormous amount of power in making these decisions. It turns on her essentially unlimited discretion whether or not to bring charges.
You know, actually, you bring that up. It's actually really simple. Is she a Democrat or a Republican?
I didn't look it up, but she's Santa Fe district attorney. She's a Democrat. She's elected.
Then he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But it sounds like maybe you're implying that if nothing happens, if no charges come, that actors in the future won't really care if they happen to also issue a negligent discharge.
Oh no, I think they will. I mean, I think deterrence matters as well for punishment, right? But like in this case, it's not about deterring Alec Baldwin. It's not about deterring other people. Like Alec Baldwin's probably not going to go out and shoot a bunch of people. But it is about the primary function of the justice system in this case is adjudicating to what extent the person was harmed in a way that violated the law, and then if that's true, how they can get reciprocity for that harm.
Yeah, a civil suit's coming, and Alec's going to be paying out millions to the family.
Yeah.
Regardless
Seems
of
like
criminal culpability, Alec Baldwin is responsible, and it's remarkable how many stands for Baldwin can't accept that. I'm a big fan of his work in 30 Rock. You know, Jack Donaghy is one of the funniest characters in a TV show. 30 Rock's amazing. You know, and he's in Beetlejuice. Great, good for him. He's kind of a bad person, but I can separate the art from the person. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Now, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.